The Colonial Parkway is a 23-mile picturesque highway in Virginia that goes from Yorktown to Jamestown, running from the York River to the James River. It connects the historic Triangle of Virginia, which includes Jamestown, Williamsburg, and Yorktown. Several million people use this road each year to enjoy Virginia's natural and cultural attractions. The construction of the parkway presented the National Park Service with a unique challenge: create a thoroughfare that connects culturally distinct sites, while also adhering to the National Park Service's primary directive, quote, to conserve the scenery, natural and historic objects, and wildlife therein, and to provide for the enjoyment of the same. A building period spanning 26 years, including the Great Depression and World War II, added to the project's complexity. The Parkway opened in 1957, and is a resounding success for the National Park Service. This route allows vehicles to take in the scenery, while minimizing environmental impact, and maintaining traveler safety. The Colonial Parkway is a meticulously designed landscape that integrates the region's natural and cultural aspects into a memorial route, honoring American colonial heritage. It is the first National Park Service-designed roadway that unites separated sites as part of a single national park. Colonial National Historical Park is a 10,221-acre NPS, located between the James and York Rivers. It was established in 1930. Colonial NHP manages and interprets the sites of Jamestown Island and the Yorktown Battlefield, which were originally designated as national monuments before becoming national historical parks in 1936. An idea for a beautiful roadway to integrate the sites into, quote, one coherent reservation, was central to the original legislation that established Colonial NHP. The Parkway, which is absent of any contemporary commercial development, was created to provide a consistent visitor experience of driving across over 400 years of American colonial history. The Parkway travels through a diverse area, offering stunning panoramic views of rivers and tidal estuaries, as well as shaded pathways through pine and hardwood forests. Between 1986 and 1989, a serial murderer possibly murdered at least 8 individuals along the Colonial Parkway. 3 couples were slain during that time, and 1 pair is missing and believed dead. The 4 crimes are linked only on the basis of circumstantial evidence, and no suspects have ever been publicly identified. Kathy Thomas, then 27 years old, had graduated from the United States Naval Academy in 1981, as part of the Academy's second female class. She had, however, departed the Navy shortly before her death. At the time, gays and lesbians were prohibited from serving in the Navy, and her sexuality had been scrutinized by 9 agents, according to her brother. She went on to have a successful career as a stockbroker after leaving the military. Thomas had also started seeing Rebecca Dowski, 21, and the two were known to frequent the area where they were murdered. Rebecca Dowski was still a student at the College of William and Mary at the time. While studying, she worked 2 jobs, caring for toddlers at a child care facility and as a clerk for the college's English department. Kathy would drive up from Virginia Beach to visit Becky at the College of William and Mary on Thursday nights. Ronald Reagan was president in 1986. These days, the era seems to be remembered as a prosperous and joyful time, but, in truth, there was as much socio-economic turmoil as ever. American labor unions were being crushed, HIV/AIDS was decimating the LGBT population, and the government remained unconcerned. Indeed, Reagan's cabinet officials would frequently make sarcastic comments about it on live television, and instated cold-hearted and apathetic policies for years before taking any action.
I've also asked HHS to add the AIDS virus to the list of contagious diseases for which immigrants and aliens seeking permanent residence in the United States can be denied entry.
Furthermore, as a result of Reagan's innumerable callous policies, significantly reduced funding for mental institutions, and repealing of mental health care policy, a great many mental health facilities were closed, which forced the patients to live on the streets and fend for themselves. At the same time, anti-Russian sentiment in the United States was as strong as it had ever been. Kathy was fluent in Russian when she graduated from the United States Naval Academy, and by all accounts, would have gone on to have a distinguished career in patriotic service. Kathleen Thomas was born in Massachusetts on July 29, 1959, to an Irish Catholic family. Kathy and her brother both attended the Naval Academy, following in the footsteps of their father. When Kathy graduated as an ensign in 1981, she and her father became America's first father-daughter pair to graduate from the United States Naval Academy. Sailors are obligated to serve 5 years of active duty after graduating from the Naval Academy, which Kathy completed in Norfolk, Virginia, where she served aboard the L.Y. Spear as a logistics officer.
I don't know, you can't tell a woman to work the way you could tell a man to. Because actually they can't work as hard as a man.
I've got 2 or 3 in my division that so far have outworked any man that I have in my division.
As long as you do what you're told and do it right, I can't see why they should complain.
They are expected to perform the same as men. They go through the same classes, same drills, same exercises, and they fly the same planes.
Rebecca Dowski was from Poughkeepsie, New York. She spent 2 years in Paris after her father accepted a job there. During her time in Paris, Rebecca became fluent in French, and graduated from the American School in Paris. When Rebecca returned to the United States, she attended Dickinson College in Pennsylvania, where she became a Mid-Atlantic Conference All-Star softball player. In January 1986, she transferred to the College of William and Mary in Virginia, where she majored in business management, and hoped to benefit from William and Mary's computing program. Rebecca had her heart set on a career in business, and relocated to Virginia to pursue her goals. A jogger discovered Kathy Thomas' white Honda Civic, which was down an embankment and tangled in shrubs and undergrowth, just off the Colonial Parkway on October 12, 1986. The jogger was concerned by the out-of-place car and alerted the authorities. Soon after, rangers from the National Park Service arrived to investigate what they assumed to be an automobile accident. They quickly realized there were 2 people inside the car and busted out the back window of the Honda Civic to get them out and render emergency medical assistance. The park rangers were horrified by what they found. Kathy Thomas was found in the car's hatchback, while her girlfriend, Rebecca Dowski, was found in the backseat. Both women's throats were slit and both women had rope burns on their necks and wrists. The car and the women were soaked with diesel fuel. However, both women's wallets containing cash were still there, and the glove box was open. It was a horrific and violent scene. Further investigation revealed a substantial distinction in the killer's treatment of the two women. Kathy's wound was far deeper than Rebecca's. In terms of force and intensity, they were vastly different. Initially, detectives believed what they were dealing with was a crime of passion, and it was likely that Kathy knew her murderer, because of the perpetrator's emphasis of violence against her. As is common in crimes of passion, investigators suspected a previous partner, and that made their top suspect Kathy's ex-girlfriend, Jolene. Jolene and Kathy had a serious relationship but had ended it amicably, with Jolene even introducing Kathy to her new partner Rebecca. Jolene and Rebecca met in a computer class at the College of William and Mary and became fast friends, close enough for Jolene to introduce Rebecca to her ex-partner and wish them well. Despite this, detectives at the time were dead set on portraying Kathy and Rebecca's murders as the work of a jealous ex-lover. The murders had occurred on federally protected land, and were therefore under the jurisdiction of federal authorities. When FBI investigators arrived, they learned that the bodies of the two women were soaked in diesel fuel, indicating that their killer had attempted to start a fire and destroy the evidence. The killer, apparently unaware that diesel fuel isn't as combustible as conventional gasoline, had poured diesel fuel all over the victims and vehicle. Investigators also discovered several burned-out matches and cigarettes, which were presumably lit in failed attempts to start the fire. After failing to light the vehicle on fire, investigators suspect the killer drove or pushed Kathy's Honda off the embankment, hoping it would smash into the river below. The car, however, was stopped by the approximately 10 feet of plants and undergrowth that lined the banks of the river, which prevented it from crashing into the water. The killer had twice attempted to destroy the car and the evidence it held, ultimately failing both times. Investigators discovered both women's purses beneath the seats inside the vehicle. Their money appeared to be undisturbed, which rules out robbery as motive. Curiously, Kathy's wallet was on the vehicle's floor, suggesting that it had been removed from her purse. Inside the car, investigators discovered more than 150 fingerprints. Unfortunately, they did not find any matches in the FBI forensic database. It looked to investigators that there was a significant absence of blood in the car. It didn't match the violence that both women had experienced. This led the FBI to believe that the two women had been slain elsewhere, and then returned to the vehicle. Possibly, for the purpose of moving them to this remote spot, where the killer attempted to set fire to the car, before pushing or driving it into the vegetation on the bank of the river. When the FBI performed autopsies, they discovered Rebecca and Kathy's bodies had significant bruising in multiple locations, which means that they had been brutalized while they were still alive. They also had nylon rope burns on their necks and wrists, meaning they'd been bound at some point during the ordeal. Forensic tests done many years later revealed brine on the ropes used to bind them, indicating that the crimes were committed in or near water. This detail could potentially explain how the killer avoided leaving blood all over the vehicle and the surrounding area. Kathy and Rebecca also had clear signs of strangulation, in addition to the substantial cuts across their throats. Their throats were cut left to right, indicating that the perpetrator was right-handed. The cut to Kathy Thomas's neck was so severe that her head was nearly separated from her body. Kathy and Rebecca were also strangled prior to the mutilation, which would mean that both women were already dead when it occurred. The question was, does that mean this was a crime of passion, or was this horrific attack perpetrated by someone so sick and twisted that they strangled two people to death, and then decided to cut their throats, nearly dismembering one of them? Both Kathy and Rebecca were fully clothed, and there were no signs of sexual assault. So investigators ruled out a predatory sexual motive. There were signs that the two women had attempted to defend themselves against their attacker, particularly Kathy, who had a substantial laceration on her thumb, which likely resulted from her attempting to take the assailant's knife. There was no evidence of robbery or sexual assault. The attacker's motives were a mystery. Kathy's hand held a clump of hair, which would suggest that she had indeed fought back against her assailant, which gave credence to the self-defense theory. Even though there were no signs of struggle in the car or the immediate area, this would seemingly confirm the idea that the victims were murdered in a different location and brought to the secluded embankment after the fact. Kathy's ex-partner Jolene would be cleared of any suspicion by investigators. The details as to why are unclear. But the FBI turned in another direction after considering the facts more closely. They believed it likely that the killer was someone of significant physical strength, as they were able to overpower both women. Both women were well known not only for their considerable intellectual ability, but also their substantial physical and athletic capabilities. The original belief that the horrific murders were a crime of passion, and suspecting Jolene as the perpetrator, was not the last error investigators made. Initially, investigators thought the victims were murdered on October 10th or 11th. However, Rebecca and Kathy were last seen alive on the evening of October 9th. Kathy was reported missing from work on October 10th. Also, Rebecca missed her classes. This significant misunderstanding of the timeframe by investigators likely led to the exclusion of suspects that shouldn't have been. Another probable misstep in the investigation occurred when it was publicly stated by investigators that because of Kathy and Rebecca's well-known athleticism and no clear evidence that the women struggled, they believed there may have been more than one perpetrator. This would seemingly differ from the autopsy results, which showed both women were heavily bruised, meaning that both women had been viciously brutalized before they were killed. Investigators proceeded to inquire into Kathy and Rebecca's personal lives, and the lives of everyone they had any interactions with. Friends, co-workers and neighbors. Nothing stood out. No single person caught their attention. They didn't appear to have any known issues with someone that would do this. As a whole, no one made mention of anything that would help point investigators in a specific direction. It was a complete and utter shock. Investigators found Rebecca's car on the College of William and Mary campus. It was packed and ready for her weekend trip up north to visit family and friends. This indicated to them that Rebecca and Kathy were taken at some point after leaving the computer lab on the evening of October 9th. And Rebecca had planned to return to campus that night, or possibly the next morning, and begin her trip. But that never happened. Family and friends said that not showing up for work and class, and not calling anyone, was extremely out of character for Kathy and Rebecca. It is still uncertain where they were going, or where they had been during those crucial hours.